Some courtroom battles are waged with arguments, but others reveal deep fractures in what we call justice. What happens when a powerful judge rules without limits? How long before the system turns against him? Stick around for a story that defies expectations. And drop a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from. Today, Maya Ellison's heels clicked sharply across the cold stone floors of the Franklin County Courthouse. She wasn't scared. She was boiling with rage, the kind that stiffens your spine and makes every step deliberate. Another day, another case. Another young black man forced to defend himself in a courtroom stacked against him. Maya had stood in this exact spot more times than she could count. But this case wasn't like the others. This time, she wasn't just arguing law. She was preparing to confront a judge who had already decided the verdict in his mind. Judge Harold Beckett. Just hearing the name made her stomach turn. For years, the man had ensured that defendants who looked like Devin Miles never stood a real chance. A remnant of a bygone era, wrapped in a judge's robe and ruling his courtroom like it was a private kingdom. The whispers about him had reached her long before she ever stood before his bench. Motions dismissed before they were finished, public defenders worn down, and silent young lives derailed by sentences that far exceeded the crime. Devin sat beside her, hands clenched so tight his fingers had lost their color. Just 24 years old, a supermarket cashier facing charges for something he didn't do. His eyes locked on the judge's bench, as if already condemned by the simple fact of being there. "You ready?" she whispered, leaning slightly toward him. Devin nodded, swallowing hard. "You believe me, right?" Maya didn't blink. Without a doubt. A creak echoed as the door behind the bench opened and the courtroom hushed in unison. Judge Beckett entered. Back straight, eyes cold and scanning, as if inspecting subjects rather than citizens. He looked to be in his late 60s, with thinning silver hair and a permanent frown carved into his features. His robe hung from his frame, swaying as he slowly lowered into his chair. Maya noticed the way he looked at her, that slight curl of the lip before adjusting the microphone. "All rise," the bailiff called out. Everyone stood. Maya kept her face unreadable. She knew the game. The trick was never showing how deep the bias cut. "You may be seated." The courtroom settled into silence. Across the aisle, Prosecutor Martin Greeley was already organized. Papers stacked, ties straightened, just enough effort to appear serious. But Maya wasn't concerned about him. She'd gone up against Greeley before. Just another overworked state prosecutor more focused on closing cases than seeking truth. This court is now in session, Judge Beckett began, his voice rough but controlled. "We are hearing the case of the state versus Devin Miles charged with armed robbery. Prosecution, are you prepared?" Greeley stood. "Yes, Your Honor." Defense? Maya rose calmly, meeting the judge's stare head-on. "Ready, Your Honor," he sniffed. "We'll see about that." Maya's fists tightened beneath the table. She hadn't said a single word, but the judge had already made his stance clear. Greeley began his opening statement, predictable and rehearsed. He painted Devin as a desperate man turned criminal, insisting the evidence was damning. They tried to link Devin to the crime scene using security footage, an alleged eyewitness, and a so-called confession he never actually gave. Maya kept her face unreadable, but in her mind, she was already dismantling every flawed piece of their argument. When it was her turn, she rose slowly and smoothed her blazer. "Members of the jury," she began, her voice calm and deliberate. "What you just heard is a narrative, a polished, carefully rehearsed version of events meant to make. You believe Devin Miles is guilty before you've even seen the real evidence." She turned, making sure to lock eyes with each juror. But justice isn't built on stories. It's built on truth. She stepped forward, her pace steady and controlled. "The prosecution will claim their case is airtight. They'll show you surveillance footage, but not tell you the person in it was never conclusively identified. They'll mention an eyewitness, but leave out that the person only saw the suspect for a few fleeting seconds in terrible lighting. And most of all, they'll say Devon confessed. Judge Beckett shifted in his seat. Maya faced the jury again. The state has the burden of proof, and by the end of this trial, you'll realize just how little they've brought to the table. She sat down, ignoring the way Beckett glared at her as if she was something beneath his gavel. The prosecution may call their first witness, he said. A police officer stepped up. Officer Jameson, the one who made the arrest. Maya already knew the script. Greeley approached, clearing his throat. Officer Jameson, walk us through what happened on the night of August 3rd. Yes, sir, Jameson said. We got a report of an armed robbery at Lenny's Market. The suspect was described as a black male in a gray hoodie and jeans. I was nearby on patrol and saw Mr. Miles a few streets over. He fit the description. Maya leaned back slightly, letting those words echo. Fit the description. The same, vague label that could apply to half the young black men in Eastford on any given evening. Greeley continued. And when you stopped him, what was his reaction? He looked uneasy, Jameson replied. Kept asking why he was being stopped. Did he resist? No, sir. But he was slow to hand over his ID. Maya had to fight the urge to scoff. Slow now passed for suspicious. Did you find any weapons on him? Greeley asked. No, sir, Greeley nodded. No further questions. Maya stood, adjusting her jacket sleeves. Officer Jameson, you said my client matched the description. Can you be more specific? Jameson shifted. Black male, maybe 18 to 25, gray hoodie, jeans. And how many young black men wearing gray hoodies and jeans do you think were out walking that night in Eastford? Greeley jumped in with an objection. Speculation, but Judge Beckett didn't stop her. Jameson cleared his throat. I couldn't say. Maya offered a faint smile. Of course not. She turned to the jury. This entire case leans on assumptions. Assumptions that a young black man on the sidewalk is a threat, that simply existing in a neighborhood makes him a suspect. But assumptions are not proof. And without proof, there can be no justice. She sat back down. And for the first time, Judge Beckett actually looked bothered. Good. She was just warming up. His stare bore into her. Like a warning not to push further. She ignored it. She always did. That quiet satisfaction. The trial had just begun, and Maya had no plans to play by the judge's script. Devon sat silently beside her, his hands still locked together, his breathing shallow and uneven. He wasn't just sitting there. He was bracing for the blow. Maya leaned in slightly, her voice soft. Stay with me, she whispered. He nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on the witness stand, as if afraid to blink. Judge Beckett cleared his throat. Let's keep this moving, he said, with a tone that left no room for disagreement. Prosecution, call your next witness. Greeley adjusted his collar and shuffled back to his table, flipping through his perfectly stacked files. He smirked before announcing, The state calls Mr. Leonard Parrish to the stand. The doors creaked as an older white man in a worn-out gray work shirt entered the room. Leonard Parrish, the prosecution's star witness. He walked slowly, carefully, like every step needed to be measured before landing. His gray mustache twitched slightly as he eased into the chair, settling like someone who had testified more than once before. Maya watched closely. His posture, the tension in his fingers, how his eyes flicked toward Judge Beckett before a single question had been asked. She'd met men like Parrish before. People who didn't just claim to see something, but saw exactly what they were told to see. Greeley offered his usual pleasant smile, the kind he always used to soften a jury. Mr. Parrish, what's your occupation? He cleared his throat. I run a place called Parrish's Stop and Shop. Been doing it for 28 years. And were you working the night of August 3rd? I was. Can you walk us through what happened? Parrish shifted in his chair, glancing once at the jury, before looking back at Greeley. I was behind the register, closing up. It was getting late. Then I saw someone come in. You mean the suspect? Greeley asked. Parrish nodded. Yeah, black guy, gray hoodie, looked nervous. Kept his hands in his pockets like he was hiding something. Maya felt her jaw tighten. Greeley took a few casual steps. And then, he came up to the counter real slow, Parrish continued. Didn't look at me. Just mumbled something about needing change. Then he reached into his pocket fast, like he was grabbing something. Greeley paused, then asked, And what did you do? I panicked. I thought he had a weapon. The courtroom went still. Greeley let the tension hang. So you felt in danger? Parrish nodded slowly. Yes, sir. I hit the silent alarm right away. As soon as I did, he ran out. And you're certain the person you saw that night is the defendant, Mr. Devon Miles? Parrish turned to look at Devon, squinting slightly as if trying to remember his face. Yes, he finally said. That's him. Greeley turned back to the jury, his smile practiced and calm. No further questions. Maya took a breath, then stood, her heels tapped with quiet confidence as she approached the witness. She stopped just short of the stand, expression unreadable. Mr. Parrish, she began. Just a few questions. He nodded stiffly. Go ahead. You've been running that store for 28 years? That's right. Then I imagine you've had plenty of customers come in late at night. Sure. And you don't call the police on all of them, do you? He straightened slightly. No. Only when something feels off. Maya nodded. Right. And something felt off about my client? She took a step closer. Tell me, Mr. Parrish, did you actually see a weapon? Parrish paused. No, but... Maya raised her hand, cutting him off. No, you didn't see a weapon, you guessed. He shifted, clearly uncomfortable. You guessed, because he's black. Because he wore a hoodie. Because somewhere, at some point, someone convinced you that a man who looks like Devon isn't just a shopper. He's a threat. Objection, Greeley shouted. She's leading the witness. Sustained, Judge Beckett snapped. Stick to the facts, Ms. Ellison. Maya turned back to Parrish. You told the police the man ran the second you hit the alarm. Is that right? Yes. And you also said his hands stayed in his pockets the entire time. Parrish nodded. That's correct. Maya tilted her head slightly, a cool smile forming. Then help me understand, Mr. Parrish. If his hands never left his pockets, how exactly did you get such a clear look at his face to make a positive ID? Parrish blinked. You also said he didn't make eye contact. She folded her arms. And yet, somehow you claim you're absolutely certain he's the same man. The tension in the room deepened. Parrish licked his lips. I saw enough. Before he left. Or, Maya asked quietly, did someone show you a photo of my client and suggest that he was the one you saw? Objection. Overruled. Parrish clenched his jaw. I know what I saw. Maya's tone dropped, calm but sharp. No, Mr. Parrish. You know what you think you saw. Silence fell. She let it linger, then stepped back. No further questions. Judge Beckett's face gave away nothing, but Maya noticed the way his fingers curled over the edge of his bench. He was annoyed. Good. So was she. Because this wasn't about facts. It was about control. And for now, he still had it. The heavy courtroom doors thudded behind her as she stepped into the hallway. The sound echoed, but Maya hardly noticed. Her heart was still pounding, and Judge Beckett's glare lingered like humid air, heavy and stifling. But she didn't let it in. Not today. Not when Devon's entire future rested on her staying sharp. Devon walked beside her, hands jammed into his pockets, shoulders tight with tension. He hadn't said a word since they left. You okay? she asked gently. He gave a dry, humorless laugh. I should be used to this by now. Maya stopped, turned to him. Don't say that. Devon shifted his weight. That judge, that jury, they already think I'm guilty. They don't decide that, Maya replied. He scoffed. Feels like they do. Maya inhaled sharply. But she didn't argue. She wouldn't lie to him. Wouldn't hand out false hope. Beckett had already made his bias clear. Every ruling another roadblock, every objection from her swept away with barely a thought. And the jury, mostly white, mostly older, watched Devon like he was already a story they had figured out. Maya checked her watch. 10 minutes before we're back in. Let's go over your testimony again. Devon exhaled and gave a faint nod. They sat on a worn bench just outside the courtroom, and Maya flipped open her legal pad. All right, she said. When Greeley asks where you were that night. Devon straightened a bit. I was home. My mom was there. She can confirm. Maya nodded. And when they ask why you were in the area the next day? I work at the rec center. I was on my way to meet a friend before my shift started. Good, Maya said, turning the page. Now, they're going to try to corner you. They'll say you hesitated when the officers stopped you. What's your answer? Devon's jaw tensed. I'd tell them I paused because I was afraid. Because when you're black and a cop stops you, you don't know if you're walking away or getting carried out. Maya's stomach turned. The truth was harsh, but still the truth. Before she could speak again, the courtroom doors swung open. The bailiff gave a quick nod. We're back, Maya whispered. We've got this. Devon rose slowly. She walked beside him, keeping her steps calm, steady, making sure he knew he wasn't walking in there alone. As they re-entered, Judge Beckett was already watching. Seated tall on his bench, his fingers tapped absently on the wood. Defense, he drawled. Call your next witness. Maya stood firm. The defense calls Devon Miles to the stand. A ripple of whispers passed through the gallery as Devon made his way forward. The jury watched him, some curious, some doubtful. One woman, seated in the back with a pearl necklace around her neck, frowned deeply, as if her verdict was already decided. Devon adjusted the microphone as he sat. The bailiff stepped forward. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Devon's fingers curled slightly, but he lifted his hand. I do. The bailiff stepped back, and Maya approached with slow, sure steps. Devon, she began, voice steady and clear. Can you tell the court where you were on the evening of August 3rd? I was at home, he replied, tone firm, with my mom. She can back that up. Maya nodded. And the next day, when you were near the area of the incident? I was heading to the rec center. Had plans to meet a friend before my shift. She turned toward the jury. Do you own a firearm? No. Have you ever been arrested? Never. Did you rob Parrish's Stop and Shop? Devon leaned in slightly, locking eyes with the jurors. No, ma'am, I did not. Maya let the words settle in the room, then stepped a little closer. Devon, when the officers stopped you, did you hesitate? He shifted. Yeah, he said, swallowing. Why? He exhaled. Because I was scared. Scared of what? His fingers gripped the edge of the stand. Scared of getting shot. The courtroom went silent. Devon shook his head. I've seen it too many times. Doesn't matter what we're doing, running, standing still, reaching for an ID. It's the same. The second those lights flashed, I knew I had to stay calm. Move slow. Keep my hands visible. Maya scanned the jury's faces. Some averted their eyes. Others didn't look away. No one spoke. Then, finally, Judge Beckett cleared his throat. Ms. Ellison, if the performance is over, let's keep this. Trial moving? Maya gritted her teeth, turned back to Devon. No further questions. She took her seat. Greeley stood, straightening his suit. He walked toward the witness stand, smirk faint on his lips. "Mr. Miles," he began, "you say you hesitated because you were afraid?" Devon nodded. "Yes." "Afraid of the police?" "Yes." Greeley tilted his head slightly, feigning confusion. "But you hadn't done anything wrong." "So why be afraid?" Devon's jaw clenched. "Because I know what happens when someone like me gets stopped." Greeley chuckled under his breath. "So you assumed something bad was going to happen?" Devon paused, looked at Greeley, then at the jury. "No, I didn't assume. I prepared." The smirk on Greeley's face wavered. For just a second. Maya's lips almost twitched. Greeley recovered, flipping through his notes. "Mr. Miles, you claimed you were home during the robbery. But your mother, she's not here to testify, is she?" Maya straightened in her seat. Greeley shrugged. "Seems strange, doesn't it? If you've got an alibi, wouldn't your mother be here to back it up?" Devon's fingers curled into fists. Maya jumped to her feet. "Objection. Judge Beckett." Barely glanced her way. "Overruled." Greeley stepped in closer. "Or maybe she's not here because she can't really confirm your story." Devon's voice cut through, steady and clear. "She can. She's just—" Greeley raised a hand. No further questions. He returned to his table, smug satisfaction written across his face. Maya clenched her jaw. Devon looked at her as he stepped down, and she saw it, that flicker of doubt beginning to show. She reached out, gripping his arm as he sat beside her. "We're not done," she whispered. He didn't speak. But he didn't look away either. Maya sat rigid, nails pressing into her notepad. Beckett was pleased with himself. Greeley looked victorious. And the jury? Hard to read. Devon sat hunched, staring at his palms, worn down. Exactly the image the system wanted, but Maya refused to give them that win. Judge Beckett tapped his gavel. "Ms. Ellison, any additional witnesses?" Maya stood. The defense calls Lisa Miles to the stand. A wave of murmurs rippled through the courtroom as the side door opened. Lisa Miles, Devon's mother, stepped in clutching her purse tightly. Her hair was neatly pinned, her gaze sharp as it swept across the courtroom and landed on her son. Devon exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for hours. Greeley's smirk wavered. Lisa took the stand, adjusted her cardigan, and was sworn in by the bailiff. Maya wasted no time. "Mrs. Miles," she said, stepping forward, "where was your son, Devon, on the night of August 3rd? Lisa lifted her chin. "He was at home. With me. All night?" Lisa turned toward the jury. "All night. We had dinner together. He helped me clean up. Then he stayed in the living room watching TV while I read in bed. He never left the house." Maya could feel it. The energy in the room had changed. The jury was listening now. She continued. "The prosecution suggested you weren't here earlier because you couldn't confirm Devon's alibi. Why weren't you here sooner?" Lisa took a breath, glanced briefly at Greeley. "Because no one told me I needed to be." Greeley stiffened. "Did the police ever contact you?" "No." "Did the prosecution?" Lisa shook her head. "No, ma'am." Maya turned back to the jury. "Yet the prosecution was quick to question your absence." She let that sink in before asking, "Do you have any reason to lie for your son?" Lisa's voice didn't waver. "None." No further questions. As Lisa stepped down, Devon reached for her hand. His grip was firm, his eyes full. She squeezed back before taking her seat behind him. Judge Beckett looked irritated but kept it barely concealed. "Does the prosecution wish to cross-examine?" Greeley hesitated. He looked at Lisa, then the jury, then back at the judge. "No, Your Honor." Maya almost smiled. Beckett cleared his throat. "Very well. Are we ready for closing statements?" Greeley went first. His delivery was steady, practiced. But something had shifted. The jury had heard Devon speak. They'd seen the woman with no reason to lie stand up for her son. Greeley tried to spin it, claimed memories could be flawed, Fear could cloud details, but Maya could see it. He had lost them. When Greeley finished, he stepped back, his shoulders slightly slumped. Maya rose from her chair. She walked slowly to the center of the room, letting the sound of her heels cut through the silence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her tone even and composed. "You've heard two stories in this courtroom, one crafted by the prosecution, built on shaky assumptions, a rushed investigation, and a flawed identification, and the other is the truth." She paused, locking eyes with the jurors, one by one. Devon Miles is not a criminal. He is not a danger. He's a son, a brother, a young man who found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time, and at the mercy of a system that too often sees black men as guilty before they even speak. She stepped forward. "The state wants you to think that Devon's hesitation was proof of guilt. But you heard him. You saw him. He hesitated because he was afraid. And can you blame him? We've all seen the headlines. We've all watched the videos. Devon did what countless black men are taught to do. He stayed calm. He complied. And still, he was arrested." She let the silence linger. "So I ask you, what does justice really mean? Is it rushing to judgment, based on fear and bias, or is it stopping to truly hear the evidence, to examine the facts, to see the truth?" She stood straighter. "And the truth is, the prosecution has not proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. The truth is, Devon Miles is innocent, and justice, true justice, demands you let him go home." She sat down, her words still, hanging in the air. Judge Beckett shifted in his seat, expression unreadable. "The jury will now deliberate." The bailiff guided the jurors out of the room. Devon leaned toward Maya. "How long do you think it'll take?" She took his hand, squeezed it once. Longer than it should, but not forever. 30 minutes later, they returned. Maya could feel her heart pounding in her chest. Devon sat frozen, his mother gripping the edge of her seat. The jury foreman, a middle-aged black man with tired eyes, stood holding the verdict in his hand. Judge Beckett nodded. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor." Maya held her breath. The foreman unfolded the paper. "On the charge of armed robbery, we find the defendant not guilty." It felt like the air was pulled from the room. Devon gasped. His mother sobbed aloud. Maya exhaled, relief rushing over her like a wave. Judge Beckett's jaw clenched, but he had no choice. "The defendant is free to go." Devon turned to Maya, his eyes wide in disbelief. "I can leave?" She nodded. "You're free." His mother rushed to him, wrapping him in her arms. Her cries were muffled against his shoulder. Devon held her back, his whole body shaking with the weight of it all. They had done it, but before Maya could even take it in. A loud sound cut through the room. The slam of a door. Heavy boots echoed across the marble floor. Law enforcement officers stepped in. Judge Beckett barely had time to react before a tall agent in a dark suit stepped forward. "Judge Harold Beckett," he called out, his voice echoing. "You are under arrest for corruption, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power." Gasps filled the courtroom. Maya stared, stunned. Beckett stood, his face going red. "This is outrageous. On what grounds?" The agent smirked. "We've got the records, Your Honor. You thought no one would hold you accountable. Turns out, you were just next in line." 2 officers moved in, placing cuffs on him. Beckett struggled. "You don't know who you're dealing with." The agent patted his shoulder. "Oh, we do." As they pulled him away. As Judge Beckett was led away, Maya turned back toward Devon. He was still staring, eyes wide with disbelief. He let out a slow breath, shaking his head. "I didn't think justice actually worked like that." Maya gave a soft smile, tucking her legal pad beneath her arm. "Sometimes," she said, "it takes a little longer than it should." She looked him in the eye. "But today, it worked just right."